what's that term? Museum villas, Okay, good morning. Welcome to the final lecture of the term. This is the last one that I'll be giving with you. Next term you'll have Moy and Yap taking you for iPhone development using Swift, as far as I know. I think the times might change from what is it Mondays? Yeah, Mondays for the actual sort of sessions going on. We were scheduled today to have a guest lecture from a chap called Jed Tyrrell, based with Tyrrell Systems, who do a lot of work with IoT and smart buildings. He set off with sort of large-scale buildings like shopping centres, universities and things like that, and smartifying their environment, moving into homes and voice control. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it, but I've also put together a sort of my own guest lecture, if you like, that I do when asked to introduce a sort of offbeat look at IoT and how things might develop in future. Now just to make a kick-off for this, you may recognise the term for that. Depends on your own sort of background. Everybody recognise where the Marauders map's from? Harry Potter, interesting bit. Anybody know what the Marauders map did? Or what it was for?
Told you where people were when they were up to no good.
That's it. Told you where people were when they were up to no good, and it became sort of like a live map.
A bit unfair to that piece of paper that tells you to be in no good.
That's right. Or similarly, anybody recognise this one? Well spotted there. The URL spotted as the Weasley family clock, which sort of indicates, you can see on the hands of the clock, the different people and what sort of state they're in. There's like a bit like a barometer there, home, they're in mortal peril, or they're enchanted, all that sort of thing. Bit of a change maybe from what we're sort of thinking about with IoT. But what I'd like to take a look at today is a concept created by a chap called David Rose called Enchanted Objects. It all sounds very phantasmagorical or something like that for it. Put out this book, Enchanted Objects. It's really good read. It's really recommended if you can sort of get hold of a copy for it, where he proposes the idea of what he calls enchanted objects, and what was known as before as ubiquitous objects or ambient objects. Basically, the idea of building IoT type functionality into everyday objects to it, and moving away from the way in which we normally interact with either sort of technology, computers, with he's got a nice sort of TED talk, just with a link to it there, and quite a few of the screenshots that I'm using have been taken from that sort of thing. he proposes a sort of what he calls a nightmare world where everyday objects are starting to disappear, really, or not be used anymore for it. For example, things like a book for it. With the advent of Kindle and reading online and stuff, you would think that book sales would tend to be disappearing. In fact, they're actually going up. They have been, well, I don't know what it is this year, but certainly in the past they've been disappearing. But you do see, in my own sort of observance of people on trains and things, you see less people reading books and more sort of electronic versions of it. How many people have actually got a watch on? Maybe 4 or 5.
That counts smartwatches.
People talk about it, yeah, smartwatches, a bit sort of in between. Watches going out of not just sort of fashion, but the general use of it. I mean, you might start to wear sort of smartwatches. I mean, you could sort of say, well, how many people wear fob watches? You know, only sort of people with a bit of affectation might sort of have that. But a lot of these sort of objects that in the past have been sort of fairly, almost sort of treasured. Like a nice watch with its sort of nice, perhaps sort of design on the front of it, the inlay, the nice sort of leather part to it. That's just a watch. We bypass that in favour of our phone, just to sort of look at that to work with. And this slim slab of glass that we refer to is starting to really replace a lot of interfaces with sort of everyday objects and turning into sort of icons typically on screen on this thin slab of glass. So a series of icons that hopefully represent what you want to do, but they're becoming a bit more sort of inscrutable. You have to know the different icons. So you, like the Twitter icon, for example. How would you know that's a messaging thing without sort of knowing? You've tied the two together, but a first-time user of it who might want to sort of know, might know what messaging is, but that icon on a desktop, on a slab of glass, doesn't really mean much to the user, unless they knew that sort of thing was there. And a lot of that, I mean, I'm not necessarily picking on Twitter, but they're all the sort of same. They've all got their own sort of icon. And you see a first-time user to these sorts of things, you can be a bit baffled by using some of these interfaces for the first time, because they don't necessarily represent what they are in real life. It's an icon, it's a figurative figurative image of what you want to do. It doesn't look necessarily like a watch or a book to sort of do it. I mean, they tried that, but then everybody wanted the same sort of type of icon. There was a bit of a big sort of melee over the number of people trying to use the same sort of message icon, for example, and there's so many messaging things about there. So we can sort of see a time when some of these sort of things have happened, but you can see things coming along where there's no pens, no wallets, and no keys. We've already sort of looked at some of these, just even physically how to make some of these in the labs, how you might sort of your keys. Why not just have that driven by your phone and by your sort of presence to open doors and the like for it. All these other things like that mean things to people. The things like a framed photo of your family. I mean, would you rather have a sort of you may be different. I mean, just being Mr. Old Guy here. I would prefer a sort of nice framed photo, with your sort of family on or something like that, rather than just looking at it on the screen to sort of get to it. Same things with sports trophies, actual maps that you sort of things that are tangible that you can read, or sort of touch for it, that you feel more part of for it. Spinning globes and books, as I say, similar sort of things. I mean, take for example. Anybody ever got a family relation who's a bit of a do-it-yourselfer? They've got a workshop or something like that. They've got loads of tools, perhaps sort of laid out in there. You never actually hear a do-it-yourselfer complaining that they've got too many tools, like they'd say perhaps about too many icons on their desktop. or they don't necessarily dream of a single tool that does everything. They like the sort of the feel of these things to sort of create with. Or something like a weather station, like a barometer, basically there. Never needs an update, you don't need a software update for something like that. It's not going to run out of power. It's sort of always sort of self-driven, so there's no recharging. There's no buttons on it, so you don't need to know how to operate it. And it's just sort of glanceable, it's there in your environment to look at. Or you just sort of catch a glance of it as you're going out, you know, and you sort of get familiar to where it is. Now, that sort of thing, yeah, an old-fashioned approach, perhaps, yeah, you say, well, I've got a better app on the phone that does that, or something like that. And that's true. All of these things, have generally got an app for it, built into a glass slab in some way. And that glass slab might be your smartwatch, it might be kind of like an iPod Nano, going up through phones and monitors and 60-inch screens and the like. But they're all just these big glass slabs. And the way in which we typically interact with technology is these are sort of things that we go down. Now, either this glass slab idea, perhaps prosthetics, where you wear something, maybe like Google Glass, putting it on, some sort of augmented reality part to it. We've also got something called animism, where we perhaps sort of try and make things that look like robots and make them all cutesy-fied. So you have your little sort of talking robot or something that can walk as well and the like, and you make them with a nice cute face so that you don't feel threatened by them, that sort of idea. And one of these things, I think particularly this chap David Rose was proposing, was a concept that he referred to, as I say, as enchanted objects. And it's not necessarily to replace all of these, it's to look at some of these things as an alternative, but let's not get so obsessed with the glass slab screen that, you know, we're cutting out the rest of the sort of world to it. So out of these sort of possibilities, as I say, there's this glass slab idea from a tiny iPod Nano stamp size interface up to big 80-inch screens that you can work with. And it's the glass slab that has a big lead in the technology base. And there's an ever increasing goal to have more pixels on screen all the time. To make these 60s, 80-inch screens, Ultra HD, you have these 4K, 16K HD sort of type things, make them thinner and cheaper, cram more features on them, and then sell 2 or 3 of them to every person on the planet, sort of thing. So, how many slabs, if you like, do you have? I mean, I've certainly got plenty. I'm not saying I'm innocent in all this, whether it's necessarily a bad thing, but we all have plenty of these glass slabs about our life to do with it. And whether or not we're going to end up with so many glass slabs that you don't know which one to look at for it. Obviously, sort of a bit of an overkill there, but that's somebody's car with plenty of phones in it and sat-nav sort of devices and the like. That might be a bit sort of saying, well, no, I'm not going down that route, I'm not going that much sort of over the top for it. All monitors for it, having a big pile of monitors to work with. Yeah, lots of programmers work with 3 monitors, 2 monitors certainly for it. These sorts of things that you see in some of the sort of sci-fi films of people on the wall of screens to work with. Or down to the small sort of slab. And one of the things about this is in using these slabs, you disconnect from the outside world. And how many people have seen the, well, you know, like the mobile phone walk as you're walking down the street, and people are sort of going from side to side. And if you're just walking down the street, you can tell from behind somebody who's been on the phone. But generally they're walking a bit slower. They seem to sort of be vaguely no-purpose walk to it. And they've disconnected from their environment, and all of a sudden they might wait, sorry, and they'll sort of move out of the way, or in waiting rooms and on trains. Again, we all do it, sort of thing. We all get embroiled in our own little bubble to sort of work with. The second sort of possibility is the idea of prosthetics or wearables for it, to sort of, in some ways, I say they're making people superhuman or post-human, if you like, adding to your own sort of capabilities for it. Now, and I'm not saying again that all of these are bad. I'm just saying, look, take a step back and have a look at some of these sorts of things. I mean, there are plenty of good ideas, particularly enabling disabilities to be overcome, whether it's sight or hearing. I mean, the sorts of things that have probably lived with for ages. You know, glasses kind of like prosthetics to be able to see people or hearing aids. They've been around for hundreds of years, if you like, these sorts of things. Ear trumpets and then hearing aids and the like. But yes, in recent years there have been more and more of these sorts of things to help people walk and enable people to more fulfil their lives in a normal environment. Now this might mean embedding implants. You possibly have hopefully heard about people having RFID chips embedded in their hands to be able to open doors. There are swallowable medical diagnosis tools where you can sort of swallow a pill and it traces it around your body, measuring different chemical qualities as it goes round. All sorts of wearables, ingestibles, those sorts of things. And it's been around us for quite some time. Back in the 80s when the Sony Walkman came out, people started having the old cassettes with it and sort of headphones on there, and you acoustically dropped out. You'd be wearing these sorts of things and oblivious to the outside world. Again, it's the same sort of thing people listening to headphones now. You zone out acoustically from what's going on around you for it. And it's still with us in new forms, you have to see, just earbuds or everybody sort of listening to music. And this whole sort of Google Glass, where you project a bit of information into your peripheral vision. You get to see a little screen in the top right of your vision for it. That's a bit more complete dropping out, actually, but that gets involved with your sight as well as the sounds of going through the thing. Now, none of these are, as I say, necessarily bad per se. It's just, are they the right approach to sort of get it? And myself, I think Google Glass missed a trick in what they're doing, because if you ever actually use Google Glass or something similar, they're still into sort of interacting with it through touching and sliding, and you'll see menus appearing and things like that. Very old style sort of interaction, rather than what could be, as we'll hopefully see after today. So you get the idea of people, as I say, sort of perhaps zoning out a bit with Google Glass, because they've got something not just in their sort of ear going on or sound-wise going on, but also something in this peripheral vision that you're seeing on the sort of side for it. And in many aspects, even sort of Google Glass ended up getting banned in place of one of the reasons why it failed was because people didn't like surveillance devices around, or coffee shops would ban it, saying no Google Glass in here, none on school premises. And these things actually did come out, more particularly I'd say in the United States, but there were sort of a lot of fighting back against the sort of use of these to sort of work with. The other idea, or another sort of idea, this idea of animism, the ideas of trying to bond with your computer. So I know it sounds all very new age and all that. Getting this sort of fantasy that perhaps technology can try to work with us better, can learn to work with us rather than us learning how to work the technology. So getting your external technology, whether it's a robot or a little robot Hoover or those sorts of things, to perhaps behave in a more friendly way towards you, to learn to behave not necessarily as you do, but to fit in with what you do. And perhaps trying to stimulate you to say, oh, isn't it nice or something. They do actually sort of try to stimulate that part of the brain that people have about when they see a cute cat or a little puppy dog or something like that. I mean, not many people want to slap a puppy dog across its face or something like that, or poke a kitten in its eye for it. Apart from Dom or something like that, it does it as his hobbies. But it sort of appeals to that, so they give you like your little walkabout robot with big eyes. And so that, they don't need big eyes, you can have just little tiny sensors in them, and you know, so maybe a shy little grin to it. And we get these robots that notice our gestures and perhaps can pick up to them, rather than just reacting to sound, can perhaps sort of see whether or not you're sort of building on this idea of recognising when people are smiling, what their emotions are. A lot of research going into that sort of facial, not just recognition, but facial expressions to it. And this is sort of having an alternative to the sort of interface that you do with the glass slab idea, to replace things like clicking or tapping, dragging and dropping, pinching and expanding out. The sort of little techniques that you're now used to. You sort of interact with your phone and you zoom something out, or you shrink it back down again. And you may be aware, I mean, try giving that to somebody who doesn't use smartphones. You get sort of plenty of people, without being derogatory or something like that, people maybe in an older age bracket, the first sort of time doing they can look at these sorts of things, and when you say, "Oh, just pinch the screen," and they maybe literally grab it like that rather than sort of trying to shrink it. It's brought in a whole new sort of vocabulary for working with them. And there's all sorts of these sort of things coming out, whether it's mobile robots, Roombas and things like that. Again, what all these are just different ways of interacting with technology for it. Now, one thing that's sort of proposed and really sort of might be not just a sort of a nice idea, and a lot of these things that I'm going to sort of show you are actually out there now, but it's the idea of making what we're calling these enchanted objects, and infusing this technology into more your normal surroundings. We may be too late already for it. We may already have even like bred a generation of people who can't do without screens to it. But I mean, myself, I do think that in 10 years' time, we won't really have hardly any screens, to like personal sort of things that you're going about with. Phones and all that will be seen as a little peak of interest for 20 years, and then they're sort of dying away. I mean, right now they're not, they're objects of desire to it, but it won't always be the case. Lots of things have come through that phase. But we're trying to sort of look at perhaps things that create a more satisfying interaction with it. I mean, you don't say you get a satisfying interaction with a phone. It does your job. It does the job. It does tell you your bus timetable. It does sort of tell you a message from your friend or something like that, or where they are on a map and things. And what we're looking at is perhaps sort of reimagining how you might use technology to make sort of things a reality. And a couple of sort of quotes of what people are sort of saying this out. This sort of David Rose is sort of predicting the idea of building an internet of things where we have objects that worry about us. Now, that doesn't mean that they're sat in the corner sobbing or something like that, but they take notice of what we want and try to make our lives better in some way. That's their objective, to do whatever they sort of do better that helps you in a better way for it. Arthur C. Clarke, a famous science fiction writer, really sort of set off in the sort of 60s writing. He's the one who wrote 2001, Space Odyssey. And all of these sufficiently advanced technologies can be seen to people who don't sort of know it as sort of magic gravel, like the idea of TV sort of things. And you show it to somebody who's never seen a TV and you look behind to see where these people are that are dashing on the screen and things like that. Things that, to people who haven't seen them before, do seem sort of quite fantastic. And yet, they've come along and now they're sort of part of everyday life to it. Do you recognise that one? Who that is? Very famous film. All of the things. And what's in the hand?
Sting.
And what's its property?
It glows blue when there's a goblin or orc.
That's right, yeah. So it glows blue when basically the enemy's about to say what's sort of happening. Oh yeah, and we've got this Weasley clock that I mentioned at the start for it that tells individuals what an individual member of the household is doing and what sort of state they're in. This is a sort of novel idea on the front of Rosie's book, actually. Their sort of ambient umbrella, and I've mentioned it a sort of couple of times. An umbrella that basically just got a glow in the handle, glowing different colours as to whatever weather's coming up. So you just have that by your sort of door, and as you're walking out, you sort of notice in your peripheral vision, or the sort of ambient area around you, the fact that the umbrella's sort of trying to help you and saying, I think it's going to rain today, you better take me, depending on what sort of colour it's at. So it's not something that's you've actively sought out. You've not actively sort of gone to your phone and said, what's the weather like today? Do I need to roll it? I don't know how many people sort of carry trolleys, that's another sort of thing. But these sort of objects can try and inform you because they know more about their environment, but what's likely to be going on and how they may help you to sort of work with things. And as we start to interact with more and more of these sort of devices, and we'll see that they start to get into, as I say, sort of everyday objects, into these sort of ambient technology. And we will have voice interfaces, there's no sort of doubt on that. But you might sort of think about, well, what are you going to call these sort of devices? How are you going to address them? Like we've already got things like, OK Google, Alexa, to sort of wake things up for it. But as you start to have more and more sort of devices around, how are we going to address these sorts of things, and how are you going to interact with them? So just a few examples of technology that might initially sort of look strange, or you think, well, no, that would never happen, but most of these sorts of things are actually either already developed, just not come to market. They've often been developed by large corporations or the MIT Media Lab and things like that, who've got the resources to make conceptual models. That phrase, mirror, mirror on the wall, triggers off something inside you about this magical mirror that can sort of tell you what you look like in some ways, or asking sort of some questions. And the idea, we were working with a company, J.D. Williams, who wanted to build something like this to it, where you can sort of look in the mirror and get different images put on it according to what you're thinking of buying. So you can sort of think, like the woman in the striped dress there, thinking about buying a black cocktail dress or whatever for the evening. Sort of just ask the mirror to show what she looks like in that, and turn around and sort of see what she's sort of looking for. J.D. Williams, that sounds, well, great. We're just a bit short on the technology at the minute, but in some ways replace that mirror by the ubiquitous black slab or something like that. Put a bit of live image processing in there, and you could have sort of 3D cameras picking up your stance and then mapping objects onto it, and then pasting it on the screen to it. And it's something that, as I say, MMU is going to get involved with just over coming years. We're working with the fashion department to sort of build this sort of idea. I mean, yes, as I say, there it's very specifically looking like a sort of natural mirror, but perhaps sort of doing these sort of things in the home as well. So you can map something in the home to saying what clothes you're wearing, what you would look like, and these things, with the size fitting you appropriately for it to sort of get around. Pens. I mean, these things are fairly old hat now, even. With pens that record what you write as you're actually writing them. So the movement that you're making, translating that into actual text. If you like, recording audio, time stamping everything you do, so using a pen just to the sort of thing that you want to do with a pen, i.e. make a permanent record. You're making a record and you want it sort of there, but ideally one of the reasons people stopped using pens was because it didn't it didn't sort of put it into some sort of electronic form that you can then manipulate. So the sort of the idea of perhaps tying together the two, saying, yeah, okay, well, we'll work with pens, and in some ways this is coming on with things like the Galaxy Note and having its little sort of pen interface and text recognition as you're sort of scribing in. But why do we have to have that black slab? Why can't the pen just do it on its own? So whatever you're writing on, or whatever sort of flat surface you're writing on can sort of work with. And that's out there already to sort of use. Getting sort of connected to augment and connect to sort of real life, having things like trash objects there that are connected to the web and will only sort of, if you like, hold the garbage truck, the pickup truck, when they're actually full. So rather than coming round once a week and emptying these, or every day, I don't know how often they empty these, or for instance, sometimes never, as far as I can see. But also not just sort of detecting when they're full, but the type of things that are in there. So if you could sort of try and scan in what actual elements are being put in, you get a better idea of which elements need sort of picking up for it. So these enchanted objects are just ordinary things, but augmented in some way and typically connected for it. Now many of these products that we'll just sort of see here are under development. Many are already constructed for it. They're just not released to the general public. They're, whether they're undergoing trials or people have built them as a concept model and sort of going along down the lines of saying, oh well, the public isn't ready for this yet. That was a bit of the case with Google Glass. They sort of did potentially a great product, but they got the marketing a bit wrong and also their interface a bit wrong to use it. But many are already on the market as well. Things like automatic shades in your rooms that close with the sun for it, so or they open and close with the sun, and your presence. So as you go in a room and it's light outside, they'll sort of automatically open for you. Now that's not necessarily a big deal. That, as I say, that's a market product out there to work with. This was quite a good one, and I'll sort of do a bit more on it later on. Google Latitude, before it changed its name, they had a doorbell that chimed with each family member's GPS signal according to how close they were. And each family member had a different chime, if you like. So that as somebody approached home, maybe when they were 5 miles off, it gave a little single bing. When they were 1 mile off, another double bing. And when they were sort of a couple of 100 metres off, a triple ding. Because a family likes to know when other family members are coming home. Now, this may not appeal to people living on their own or something like that, thinking, well, it's not for me. But a lot of families do want to know where other family members are for it. Are they on the way? Your wife's sort of 200 metres from the street, and if mine doesn't get a cup of tea within 30 seconds of her getting through the door, it's me who gets a verbal whack around the head or something like that. So, it sort of helped people be better prepared. Rather than just announcing the work, because when somebody rings a doorbell, they're already there, and it's sort of perhaps too late to sort of work with that. Things like building these ideas more into things like everyday objects like coffee tables, where there's sort of a map built into a coffee table, or something to the way you want to sort of discuss with people, share and interact with different aspects of it, like sort of, as I say, sort of looking at a map. Discussing family holidays, or again, I mean, we're talking now about sort of family homes and that, but they are a big sort of part of the market for these. And as I say, this ambient umbrella lights up when the forecast calls for rain, to sort of say, and it's just sort of hanging by the door, just saying, just pick me up on the way out, will you? So they're all sort of interacting with you, but not necessarily through, although that previous one was, not necessarily always through a screen for it. Glow caps, they're out for it now. Glow caps to remind you to take prescriptions. And these are manufactured in the same screw top size as the actual medicine models for it. So they just replace normal caps there. And sort of glow different colours according to, say, how close you are to needing to take a medicine or a prescription. Maybe linked to lights in the house as well, to sort of flash the lights in the house to sort of say something like that for it. Or these more sort of manipulating your spaces for sort of small flat living, where you can sort of move your room to modular sort of living to sort of slide out the bed, to sliding it back and having a shower, or in that case a little basketball sort of thing it looks like to me. But sort of the residents can manipulate their sort of own environment to sort of fit in better with a smaller living space. This energy consumption monitoring, big push going on, as you're probably sort of aware, by the energy companies and the government to get everybody to have a smart meter inside the house to tell you when you're using energy, how much you're using, to automatically read your meters and send it back. Myself, I'm a bit, although I sort of tend to like these sorts of things, you might also, if you're sort of cynical, say that they can then start charging different rates every hour to it. At peak rates, they might say, well, we won't just have sort of overnight rates and daytime rates or something. We'll have it so that if you want to use energy in the advert break for Coronation Street, when everybody goes making a cup of tea or something like that, we'll suddenly zap up the price and that sort of thing. Sort of rather like things like Uber do and travel companies do over manipulating prices according to demand. But as demand sort of goes up, it can shift the price. Now, I'm not saying that necessarily going to vote on that route, but if you're cynical, it might sort of well happen. However, use of these does reduce your actual energy consumption. You can see how much exactly that you're using. You're more prone to turning down your actual sort of energy consumption as you go along. So what we'll see just in a moment is that they have a little light attached with it, not just the meter, but also a light put up with it. Now, Rose sort of categorised his enchanted objects into different sort of areas of, you can see sort of omniscience, telepathy, safekeeping, immortality, teleportation, expression, sort of putting different ambient technology into different sort of categories, rather like a sort of periodic table where you group things together according to properties. But if we have a look at one or two of these, this idea of the omniscience, the desire to know everything for it, things that tell you stuff like almost like sort of like a crystal ball, if you like, or the water of knowledge that when you drink it, you get to know sort of everything. That's sort of a thing when we've seen. Everybody's seen that sort of film. Things like a browser that's just a single pixel. So you think of what browsers are, and how many pixels are in a browser. This browser is just a single pixel that just glows a different colour according to the state of some sort of subject. So it might be the weather today, moving from red through to green, and all the different sort of colours in between. What's my ride to work like? What's my energy consumption? Lots of sort of different examples where just this ambient module, this ambient sort of glass ball or little sort of side light that's just in your peripheral, in your periphery of seeing things, but telling you something without necessarily blurting it out on the screen or even sort of having voices coming out with it. So the energy joule could be linked to, as I say, one of your smart meters. And these sort of tests that they're doing in trying to implement these show that typically people drop around 20% in energy usage if they can be told in some sort of nice, non-nagging way that they're using too much. And particularly if you're the one paying the bill. So you're the one who goes around switching sort of stuff off. So a sort of little, what they call this energy jewel there, just glowing different colours according to what energy usage you sort of got within. You can sort of lay back with a satisfied smug look on your face when it does glow green, or something like that sort of idea for it. Keen fisher, if you're sort of keen on going fishing, sort of reflecting on what's the fishing like today for it, depending on whether or not they're biting. That's going to appeal to a small sort of audience. But something even like just one of those little glow things, you could perhaps sort of anticipate being linked up to a whole variety of applications, just to let you know whether things are good or bad for it. So is it poor fishing, is it ideal fishing, and as I say, sort of range of colours in between. Is it a good time to water your garden? Sort of thing really that you might have incorporated even into your task 3 of the assignment, where your garden's deciding when it needs actual sprinkling happening. There are a combination of whether or not there's rain due, a combination perhaps of what the soil dryness is like for it, to sort of pick up on that, or different sort of areas here. And again, sort of just a light feeding back from things being very wet to very dry for it. Because this general idea is that pervasive computing, ambient, these enchanted objects can be very persuasive if they're more in people's everyday life. So if it's part of an everyday object, and you're not sort of feeling that you're being told to do something. People don't necessarily react very well to being sort of told, well, you must do this. I mean, you'll need someone to see some of my emails I send out trying to suggest stuff to it, and people often sort of back away from it saying, well, I want to do it this way, something like that, but I'm not being told for it. Second sort of part of this is this connectivity idea, this desire that we've all got for connecting with other people. Well, I say we've all got, I know there's some people who just prefer to sit in their own bubble and all that, but in general, people like to connect. That's the whole sort of rise of social media and different ways of sending messages to each other, different sort of ways of doing that. So yeah, I mean, something like this Weasley clock, keeping in touch with the family, who's in trouble to it, who's on the way home to it, and you've got the multiple hands on it there. All seems quite sort of fantastic to it. But that sort of thing could be put into something like this this door chime. It's not sort of fully the sort of same, but as people approach different sort of levels, like 10 miles away, one particular level of chime, 2 miles away, a double bing, and 0.1 mile away, a treble bing sort of thing, just to tell you where people are and give that reassurance to people, to the right sort of environment to it, without necessarily having you to sort of go, yeah, these sort of things are about already, but you could go to a phone and sort of see, I think the Uber adverts at the minute sort of allows you to look at your phone and see where the taxi is as it's sort of coming. All these things are forced, some of these sort of technologies are forcing you to go and look at this sort of black slab, where it can just be sort of part of your normal environment. You can just get on with things, if you like. We've got this idea perhaps of safekeeping of objects, protecting things, or to be protected, rather like a sprinkler system. For example, flower sprinklers that can turn on according to the dryness of the soil, or something like that. Here's a product that never really made it to market, and I can't see doing it. It came out from MIT's Media Labs. They had what they called the proverbial wallet. They introduced a spring into the hinge of it that became harder and harder to open as your bank account went down. So as your available funds got less, you felt it. I mean, you could still open it and sort of get to it, but you were reminded then of what your current state of your financial affairs was. So yeah, if it's almost suddenly impossible to open because you basically run out of the money in the sort of bank for it. Again, with perhaps that you might sort of think of that for holding whether it's credit cards or actual sort of cash being on its way out. Is that sort of necessarily going to stop you for it? Some of these are just coming out as ideas, to generate ideas and people how you can build these sorts of things into, as I say, sort of everyday technology, everyday sort of life technology for it. This other aspect on that periodic table of enchanted objects, this immortality idea, the desire to be healthy, the desire to extend your life, be vital for it. Now, just coming back here to this smart pill bottle, the smart cabs, these remind us to take medicine. People do often forget. Whether it's the sort of cliche, I forgot to take the contraceptive pill or something like that, or I forgot to take my heart medicine this morning, all sort of things can sort of lead to forget. And these things can subtly pulse with light in increasing intensity. Now that might be a big thing, not necessarily everybody's carrying about a big sort of pill bottle, but that's just the current vehicle for it. It's just the general idea. And these things could perhaps send text messages. So it could send you a text message or you some sort of message to say, you've not taken one of these yet today. Or email one of your loved ones, if you like. If you've got elderly relatives who need to take a couple of these sorts of things a day and they find out that they've not been taking them or forgetting them, so that some relatives can get a weekly summary of what they sort of done. Ordering repeat prescriptions, knows when it's empty, so automatically sort of sends the prescriptions off to sort of get it. Now, missed doses for a normal population, we had a sort of control group there's this sort of study that, again, I think MIT put out, a control group of people just taking medicines. And overall, they found out that 71% of doses were taken. So it wasn't like that they took the ideally 100%. If it's something to prescribe here, like antibiotics, they always tell you must finish the course. If you don't finish the course, then you're not killing off all the bad things, if you like. Some of them will survive to be stronger the next time. You're supposed to entirely finish these courses of medication. Now that's what sort of a poor adherence sort of can sort of look like. Some people take the whole lot, some people miss out a lot of them. Using that glow cap, they had a huge difference to it, in that 95% of doses were taken over this 6-month study of it. So a difference of 71% to 95% is sort of huge there. And that's going to have a big effect on the sort of general health of population to sort of take these more. So dumb versus smart, if you like, this enchanted object being able to sort of reduce health costs for it, because if you can make sure people are taking their correct medication, you're going to sort of stop them having follow-up problems that may sort of come out of it as well. So it's not just sort of something that makes your life easier. It can pay for itself, sort of thing, in reducing these sort of health costs. There's a general idea of transportation as well, the idea of moving effortlessly. And going back to one of these other sort of examples, this Marauders map, revealing every classroom, hallways, all parts of the castle, where the secret passages are, where every person is, where all the baddies are, portrayed by a dot. To some extent we do have that sort of thing. Bus maps, transport maps. Again, you bring these up on your phone, bring these up on your laptop, show you where things currently are to it. I mean, I use one of these every day. I catch the train every day. I'm forever just looking up at the progress of where my train is. You know, is it worthwhile me going to this station or another station, according to which one's sort of due? And so we get used to this idea of a live status map of buses, trains, whatever sort of transport that were taken. But it's not necessarily here in the right place. What we could sort of be looking at is something like an ambient bus pole, again, that sort of glows according to knowing whether it's worthwhile staying here or going on somewhere else. So as you're moving about your environment, you're being told about what's a good, where's a good place to wait, what's the next good thing coming along, if you like. So this sort of ambient bus pole reacting to you, showing you what your sort of particular transport need is, whether it's best to sort of wait here because it's very close, or say, well, you know, that's look for a different one along. Playing, creating, making, this idea of expression to it. Live logging cameras have come to the fore a bit in the last sort of few years. People sort of having wearable cameras that record every instance of their day. It used to be just done in stop motion, now it's just the storage capacity has gone up so much and so cheap that it's just sort of doing live video for it. This is in some ways what one of the objections to Google Glass was. People didn't want them being, people didn't want to be recorded 24 hours. There's a couple of links there to, if you want to sort of follow some of these talk about people live logging their life basically, and being able to perhaps sort of do some analysis of that after. And not necessarily you doing the analysis. Well, it might be nice to look over where you've sort of been today, if you've been on a tourist trip or something like that, or you want to remember things rather like you do with photos. But if we could get some sort of auto-analysis of this, who did you interact with? Were they smiling? You can do some facial analysis of this. So how good was your interaction with people? Where did you spend your time? Who did you interact with? To give you a flavour for was your time productively spent? Maybe you may not sort of be interested in that sort of thing, but you can sort of learn to maybe adapt your behaviours as well if that's sort of needed. The trouble is with things like this, you get huge amounts of data being generated, sort of torrents of it sort of coming out, of which you typically don't need the 99% of it. But there's quite a few these things, as I say, just sort of cropped up a little sort of list of some of the best-selling ones out there, and they're embedded into, let's say, more and more different devices. And these things are already, the data of these things are already being used by particular companies, in particular marketing companies. Ditto is a company that analyses Instagram and Twitter feeds, looking out for, doing image recognition, looking for brands. So whatever images are out there, it's looking for these sort of brands for it, people, products, and tying the things together. Not necessarily what you're particularly interested in, but in general, what are people interested in? What's in people's environment for it? What works and what doesn't work to sort of work around it. And there's nothing to stop you building your own enchanted object for this. I mean, just for example, your own sort of smart trash can for it. If you can get things like cameras that put onto it, barcode readers, or in future things like RFID readers or NFC readers for it, a barcode reader that should be. Then once you start picking up